Hello and welcome to a brief history of Proto-UwU-Ramplang, the wheelchair-accessible language. I am Athena, giving this presentation on behalf of Team Cyborg. Without further ado, let's get into it. A quick breakdown of what we will be doing today. We will be going over the history of this very famous, well-known language that you all should know of. We will be going over forming words within the language. We'll talk about the system of loan words, then some miscellanea, pronunciation, punctuation, numbers, etc. Might go over a few example words, and then we'll go over a sample text, which is a traditional folk story, or folk dance, I suppose, in this sign language. Start off with the history. Once, many years ago, there was a culture that was in some ways very progressive for its time. The first settlers there were a small band of war doctors and their patients, neutral parties separated from the battlegrounds of a war after a natural disaster, people from both sides, both stranded after an earthquake separated it from the mainland. So they started living together. From both sides, there were sick or wounded soldiers, war doctors, surgeons, nurses. They had miraculously all survived, though they were all trapped as the earthquake had cut them off from all outside supplies, and survivors from each side were too worried about the stigma of speaking their native languages to their nation's longtime enemies, as they had to depend on each other to survive, and bringing up those old ties to the war was simply too traumatic. And most of the population needed ramps to get around, being usually injured or disabled from the war, and so they built, as they were building up their settlement, they built in a very unique architectural style that emphasized ramps and one-story buildings, and they eventually came up with a sign language based on falling, because not everyone can walk around, but everyone can fall over. They had a very unique architectural styling, as already mentioned. Mobility aids were very common. Architecture involved a lot of single-story things, which made the language make a lot of sense. It was considered incredibly sensible. You could always tell when someone was talking to you. There were always slopes nearby to throw yourself against. Again, see how common the ramps were. It encouraged more thoughtful speech. When getting up again takes so much effort, you really think about what you have to say, and it symbolizes the transformative journey that speech can take you on, and most importantly, it builds character. Now, eventually, over time, the perception of the language began to shift and grow. One major group, one second, I'm going to get my laser pointer up here. One major group noted that the language's very small vocabulary, you could only have about 1,000 words naturally in the language, could be fixed by measuring, say, the strength of a hit against a ramp, or changing what one is throwing oneself against from a ramp to a stair. And they eventually split off and started to speak a dialect known as stair slang, which is another very famous language that you should all know. I will have a lecture on it eventually. Here is a spoken sample of stair slang.
Falling down the stairs accent challenge number what? Oh! Oh! Ow! Oh, Jesus Christ.
But others argued staunchly against this, the most popular counterclaim being that the dictionary was in fact too long and could easily be shortened tenfold. And besides, stairs aren't wheelchair accessible, and it could be even argued that the way of speaking in the first place was dangerous, especially for those the ramps were designed to assist in the first place, which led into the creation of which, as you all know, I already have a lecture on. You can watch it here. Sorry for the microphone quality. I know, it got better, and I'm sorry about that. You all loved my terrible microphone quality in that first one. Yes, grew out of the loanword system here. Here you can see again, wheelchair accessible, based on making faces, which is how loanwords work in this language, where stair slang is a physical sign language and builds character. In the east of the island, mostly stair slang is spoken. In the west, other languages, especially, are spoken more often nowadays. That's the history of the language, and where it is today. It's a very quick summary, but I think you understand. I will be attaching a half-formed document with my notes and script to this, so you can read more on the history of this beautiful language. Now, forming words. Actual juicy details on the language. This is Psi. They will be our subject for today. You can see there are a few different parts of the body. These are the places of articulation, as it were, within Proto-UwU-Ramplang. The head, the arms, or specifically the elbows, the hands, the back, the ass, the legs, or specifically the knees, and the feet. If you speak stair slang, you will know, you will recognize most of these places of articulation. They're very similar as the language evolved into that dialect. And you can see each of these is also represented by a different symbol within the romanization of the language. Of course, since this is an ancient language that is sort of a dead language, not spoken anymore other than by linguists, these are merely romanizations of the original symbols. I do not have any of them attached because I couldn't be bothered to draw them. Those corresponding modern stair slang symbols can also be used, which you will see if and when I do my presentation on stair slang. Long story. And yeah. This is how we write out a word within Ramplang, Proto-UwU-Ramplang, PUR for short. It consists of some combination of these letters. In this case, we have the head, the left hand, and the ass. So this would be the word for a person, or and another thing is the material that the ramp is made of changes the meaning of the word, or changes with where the word is used. So these would be soft ramps, which indicate mid-sentence pauses, like colon, semicolon, commas. If-then clauses are made with accidental ramps, here represented by cabbage, and temporary ramps, here represented with a wooden ramp placed over the cabbage. Indicative tense is indicated by a natural ramp, such as a hill or an ice flow. Imperative is a stone ramp. This is if you're telling someone to do something. It's a ramp made of stone. Clarification markers, which we'll go over later. Adjectives do not fit this, but pretty much every word needs to be clarified in some way, almost every word, with a ramp made of rocks, not to be confused with a stone ramp. This is a very important distinction. The end of a sentence is indicated by any other kind of ramp, here represented by a plastic tarp. So here you can see, there you go. Here you can see that we are saying the word for a person over the imperative stone ramp, which means that this is being used as part of an imperative sentence. Onto loan words. Loan words are formed by movement of the eyes. So you take the sounds that form the word in its home language and attach them to ocular movement. So looking up represents any consonant. Looking down represents U. Looking left represents A. Looking right represents any other vowel, or specifically and looking forward represents O. I likely mispronounced those. I'm not the sharpest on my IPA. So here, for example, would be how to say random name Agma Schwa. A, G, M, A, Sh, U, A. Onto numbers. Numbering system is pretty simple. You see there are 3 parts here that are touching the ground, represented with the red. This could mean either person, or it could mean a number. Any guesses for what number? That's right, it's 8, because there are 8 places of articulation not touching the ground. Very simple numbering system. Real quick, some other things. As mentioned, either pictograms, modern stair slang writing, or the Romanized symbols can be used. It's standard to write right to left, top to bottom, head to foot. Word order is subject, verb, object. Interestingly, neither nor stair slang use SVO word order, and they both use 2 different word orders to SVO. It is not known exactly how that came about, but it's believed that political interference may be at hand. Parts of speech, this is what I mentioned earlier. All nouns, verbs, adverbs, and adjectives are marked with another word made from a ramp made of rocks, with the exception of adjective markers being agreeing with the word that they modify. And interestingly, nouns and adverbs both use the same word, which is, if I remember correctly, both hands and the left elbow. Pluralization is done through reduplication, so people would be literally person. And adverbs and adjectives are reduplicated to surround the words that they modify. So, for example, applying it to English, the comfortably soft slope would become the comfortably soft slope, soft comfortably. Sort of like how parentheses work. You need to have an opening and a closing. And now on to the example text, or the example story, folk dance. This is an excerpt taken from what we believe to be an ancient form of a traditional stair slang folk story, which was a legend about a local boogeyman, a ghoul known as Enwalt, who appears to have been a spirit attached to local ritual traditions in the same way that a Santa Claus figure, or other similar, or like a Krampus sort of, like a holiday thing. This version of the story was potentially used to teach children how to count to 12, as there's a base 12 counting system, though only 3 of the counting verses actually remain, so we'll be looking just the first 3 verses. I will be reading this out in English because I am not a very skilled Ramplang speaker, but we will have the visual, the visuals, remember, right to left on screen being performed. I will attempt to add some audio, but it being a sign language, a little difficult for me to do, so you'll have to work with me here. I am completely sure about these true facts. 1. Enwalt is a ghoul. 2. There is a part of him, I don't know how big. That part may be that is hungry for my food. 3. He won't take back his love for me. So you can see it's sort of like a rhyme. Here it is all written out. Yes, right here it is all written out. I think this is actually written bottom to top. It should be top to bottom, but I think I fucked up the formatting there. But yeah, there's our traditional Proto-UwU-Ramplang. Full text is, I'm sure about these true facts. 1. Enwalt is a ghoul. 2. There is a part of him. I do not know how big that part may be that is hungry for my food. 3. He won't take back his love for me. And there you go. Thank you for attending this lecture. This will be on the quiz. I have not made a stair slang video yet, so the whole concept of this language probably doesn't make any sense to anyone. Dropping character now at the end of the video to say, yeah, that last part, that's the example text. Hope you enjoyed. I hope I didn't forget anything. This is a proto language, and it is a history. We included the history of the language in there. So I hope vying for those bonus points. Yeah, them's the video. No numbering system jump scare this time. Sorry, guys.